Okay, so questions that start with the word prove or have the word proof within it, algebraically and so forth, all these kind of keywords are suggesting then that we need to be thinking about the things we're dealing with. So we're dealing with consecutive integers. Okay, so prove algebraically that the difference between the squares of any two consecutive integers. Well, integers are whole numbers that go things like 4, 5, 6 and so forth, consecutive. Any two, and we're trying to prove something here, so we should define n as being any integer. And because n is any integer, we're talking about the consecutive ones, then n plus 1 will be the consecutive integer. And it says the difference between the squares of any two consecutive integers. So basically, n plus 1 is the second integer squared, and the difference means take away sum. Take away calculation. And the first integer was called n, so it's n squared. So work out what n plus 1 squared is. So we've got to remember that squaring a bracket means we're doing the bracket times the bracket. And then multiply out the bracket, whichever technique you like to use. Personally, I use the grid, but it doesn't really matter. If you use foil and so forth, they all work. So timesing, so n times n is n squared. N times 1 is plus n, and n times 1 is again plus n, and 1 times 1 is plus 1. So bring out those, then we end up with n squared plus n is plus 2n, and then plus 1. And then we're taking away n squared. And so this gives us n squared take away n squared is nothing, so that's 2n plus 1. So that's the difference of the two squares. And then it says it's equal to the sum of these two integers. So the sum of the integers is n plus 1, which equals 2n plus 1. Therefore, 3 dots for therefore. Therefore, when a triangle this is, if it's upside down, it would mean because. 3 dots, therefore, both the same result of 2n plus 1. So proved. Okay, so key things about proof then is define letters that you're going to use. Think about the language. Once you define one letter, then define the next things in terms of that letter. Go through the context of the question, so the difference between the squares, so do the difference between the squares, and then split, and then do the other side as what it wants you to equal it, and see if they're the same. They are the same, so therefore we've proved that both results work.